In a rare step from OFAC, we are seeing sanctions issued against an entire crypto exchange. It's the relatively obscure SUEX exchange. And we've seen OFAC sanction particular blockchain addresses in the past, but we've never seen it at this scale. So that is why we are talking about this today. I'm going to throw this straight to Will. Will, when you see OFAC taking action at this scale again, what are your initial thoughts?
Initial thoughts. One, I have never heard of SUEX. There's a lot of
Neither have I.
exchanges out there.
That's
So,
true.
I mean, I feel like at this point I probably should have heard of them, but U.S. government has apparently. Two, my thought is this is escalating pretty quickly, and the U.S. government is looking for finger holds on a pretty slippery wall of this whole cryptocurrency industry. Like, where do you kind of dig your fingernails in to kind of grapple with any like complaints or issues that you have with the larger industry? Can't attack Bitcoin. Has this node infrastructure, very difficult to shut that down. Can't really attack the miners. It's kind of private property. You can go after exchanges though, and that's why I think we're going to see more and more. Gary Gensler has put out some rhetoric against Coinbase, or rather the other way around. Coinbase has put some rhetoric out against the SEC based on conversations the SEC and Coinbase have had behind closed doors. So you've seen some pressure upon that front. You've seen Binance starting to change its position on regulatory issues around the world. And now we have this no-name exchange that apparently is being used by criminals to launder funds. I don't know about SUEX here in this instance itself, but there are a ton of crypto exchanges out there. The first crypto exchanges were merely just GitHub repos, copy and pasted between each other, launched up, thrown on a server, and people.
Yep.
Oh, no. We lost Will. He's been silent. He's gone on too much about the government, so they've silenced him.
Jen, you jump in here, otherwise I'll jump in.
All right. Pick up that thought, yeah.
Yeah, so the government's saying that SUEX has been used by criminals to extort U.S. companies in ransomware attacks. And what's interesting here is they're saying any U.S. citizen or business that operates with this exchange can be fined or jailed. And so, Naomi, I'm just going to say this thought, and I'm going to kick it off to you because I think you'll have a lot to say about it. But private companies, when they decide to pay a ransomware attack to get the information they've lost or their services back online, they're not making that decision on a whim. They're making it with their insurance providers. They're making it with their lawyers. And they are in some ways prepared through their insurance providers for attacks like this. And so now what the government is saying is if you decide with your team that you're going to pay these criminals to get your information back, you could end up in jail. I think that's a slippery slope. And what's the alternative? Are companies being asked to work with the government on some process to get their services back online? I feel like more data would be lost, and we're not protecting the everyday citizen as much as we say we are. But I'll kick it off to you, Naomi.
Yeah, we're absolutely not helping the companies themselves that are getting their machines hijacked by stopping them from doing the only course of action that's available to them, which is, negotiating to get their data back online. But, with regard to these OFAC lists, it's super interesting and super scary because this really is an area where the government can do a lot of damage in crypto. So they start off with an obscure exchange, and then maybe they add a well-known exchange, maybe they add DEXs. I mean, the idea that individuals have control over their finances is predicated on the idea that, well, even if it's KYC, whatever, the government can follow it, but I can always send it to a DEX. I can always swap it for something else. I have control over that asset. Now, if the government starts to add DEXs to these OFAC lists and says, you cannot interact with this smart contract, you can not interact with this automated market maker. And so that's when it starts to get scary. And it's not completely outside of the realm of possibilities that they're going to do that. All they need to do is say, well, there are some terrorists who once used this DEX. Therefore, this is now sanctioned. I mean, isn't that what they're doing with SUEX? I don't think that that's a 100%, hey, if you're a terrorist, come to us. We are the service provider for all people doing criminal activity. Like, I think that maybe there are just some bad people using it and the rest of the people are probably not bad and just using it as an exchange. And so, when they start to say this is being used by terrorists, therefore we're shutting down the whole thing, the whole exchange is banned, that's a really slippery slope and just gives you a taste of the kind of damage that the government can do with regards to cryptocurrency. But Zach, I'll throw it to you.
I will say this one is pretty egregious. I mean, the Treasury Department is alleging that 40% of all their transactions were linked to illicit accounts, so or known malicious actors. So this is clearly an outfit that didn't take compliance too seriously, and I think the fact that they're the folks getting cracked down on here could be a good sign, but certainly could suggest that future action is afoot. I'll toss it back to you, Naaman.
But that means 60% of the people using
That's
the
right.
exchange are
60-40.
law-abiding citizens. So if they know of the criminals using it, why don't they target the criminals? It's the age-old question in crypto. Why are they going after the exchanges or the mediums of exchange when they could just be targeting the criminals, which is what law enforcement should be doing? So if they know who those criminals are, sanction the criminals. It's as simple as that. It's crazy that they're sanctioning a whole exchange, in my opinion. But Zach, Will, I'll throw it back to you to finish your thoughts there.
My thought went out when my computer died. So I'll just address what you're saying there. I think that on the whole, though, it's up to the exchange, though, to be acting by the law. If you want to launch a business, you have to act by the law. That's just like the reality of the situation. It's not necessarily something that I always agree with. Yes, laws can be bad. Yes, laws can be good. But in this situation, like the exchange has a duty to those law-abiding citizens who operate on it, that they're not going to let bad actors into the gates as well. And obviously, they didn't act by it. If this is true, if they are using that, if 40% rather are criminal activities on this exchange, then they should be shut down. I think we still need to see proof that that is the case, though. I think there was that report last year that less than 1% of all Bitcoin transactions are used for illicit activity. So that must mean that this exchange is being used by all of that less than 1%. It just seems like dubious to look at that figure and say like, oh yeah, 40% here is criminal activity.
I would just, to wrap up those thoughts, Will, say that what do they define as criminal activity? The fact that all of us commit 3 felonies a day, we are all criminals, by necessity, because there are way too many laws in the law books for people to, you are, Zach, you are a criminal, whether you want to be or not.
What are you
We
talking
just
about?
don't have the capacity
Take us
to
all
know
down
what
with
all
it.
of the laws in existence are, right? And so every single one of us is committing 3 felonies a day on average. And so are they considering, are they saying everyone here is, using malware and infecting computers, or are they saying, there are some people here who are, probably committing some really vacuous, wide-reaching law that isn't really something that we would consider a criminal activity? A lot of questions in there.